I was reading the other day about a guy called Jake Fari, who is a 35-year-old British man. I think he's black. He went to prison for killing a lad back in 2008, and he spent about, I think, around 15 years in prison. Sorry, 14 years in prison, and he got released in 2023. So after being released, he became a rapper and he started creating this rap music. And in one of his lyrics, he bragged about killing this young lad. And this became really controversial because he was being promoted on the BBC and on the radio. And even people like the Prime Minister were questioning how the BBC could be promoting this kind of music from someone like this. I mean, it got me thinking about not just this case and about this person, but about the larger context. First of all, he showed no remorse for killing this lad, even at the time he did it. He showed no remorse whatsoever. And clearly, the fact that he's been making this music about it since and bragging about it shows that he doesn't feel any remorse for what he did, any sympathy for the parents of that young lad. The parents of that lad, by the way, they found it within their heart to forgive Jake for what he did. And I think that's because forgiveness is really the only way you can move on from such a tragedy. If you can't forgive, then you're going to spend the rest of your life in negativity, and it's just going to hurt you. So they did understandably what they had to do in order to find closure in life. Nevertheless, it really saddens me to see that he hasn't tapped into his deeper sense of humanity about what happened. Instead, he sort of doubled down on this very egotistical take on this, which is that he's the superior man for having killed somebody else. And now he's making music about it, and now our society is promoting this music. So he's not really an outlier, in my opinion, because there are so many examples of this in today's world, in the UK, in America, in other parts of the world, of young men, particularly black men, who join gangs. They are involved in violence, they perhaps kill people, they maybe go to prison, maybe they don't, and then they make music about this. They music about all of their escapades. And the music sells, and people buy it, and people glorify it. And I just think, what kind of a culture are we creating where we're promoting this sort of thinking and this sort of mentality to the point where it's not just the glorification, it's the fact that this person doesn't even feel remorse. They don't even feel bad about what they're doing. How are we supposed to encourage a shared sense of humanity when we can't even get someone to feel upset about something terrible that they've done? Now, caveat here, most people obviously do not feel this way. Most people will feel terrible if they're involved in something like this. But we definitely have a subculture, and it is the whole gangster rap, gangster violence, predominantly black men subculture in the West, which doesn't operate according to those same humanistic values. It's all about power, popularity, success, money, sex, much more shallow, egotistical things. There's nothing wrong with wanting those things per se, by the way. It's just the fact that everything is sacrificed at the altar of that, including their own humanity. I mean, I remember a while ago, I was watching a video of a black man in the UK. He'd come out of prison and he'd reformed himself. And he was relating the story of how he ended up in prison. And he grew up in poverty, he joined gangs, he became a thief, and he was doing a lot of these robberies. And what was interesting to me in hearing his story was that he talked about how he, as he was escaping the police one day, broke into this house. There was a mother and a daughter there. They were terrified. And he was talking about how he just ended up doing all these things to try and get away from the law. But the key things that stood out for me were, for one, his main concern at that time was getting caught. And that's what made him question what he was doing. Well, it's either you get caught or you get killed as part of gang violence. So those were his two main concerns. I'm going to get killed or I'm going to get caught. And then that aside, he didn't seem to, again, show any remorse for the people he hurt whilst he was doing these robberies, whilst he was going out and doing all this crime. and again, I found that interesting. I think to me, it just speaks to how out of touch these people are with their humanity. The main concern is whether they get caught. The main concern is whether they get hurt. The amount of hurt they've caused other people doesn't even feature in their minds. And to me, that's really scary. So because he's a reformed person, so he's now trying to help the community, right? And yet even he doesn't talk about remorse. Even he doesn't feel any guilt for the people he hurt. It's crazy. It's crazy, but that's the sort of culture we've created. And I'm not sure it's easy to fix this. It requires a cultural shift. It requires a shift in that subculture. But that requires society at a larger level to criticize the subculture, to criticize gangster rap, to say, this is unacceptable, this is trash, this is degenerate, this is bad. We do not want people to be getting into this. We shouldn't be encouraging this. In other societies around the world, in particular some East Asian societies, they wouldn't allow this sort of thing. And this is where people will say, well, that's impinging on people's civil liberty rights, on people's creative freedom. And I agree with that, it is, but that doesn't mean that creative freedom should be completely unfettered. It's crazy. It's a crazy world, and I wish those people were different. I wish they felt differently about things.